365 dias para dar a volta em torno do Sol. Um ano? Puxa, como você mede isso? Em dias? Meses? Horas? Neste ano tão atípico, esses pontinhos brilhantes se espalharam pelo Brasil junto com o sonho de discutir sobre a sustentabilidade do uso da água. Desculpe, esqueci de me apresentar. Somos a TWRA e em 2021 completei um ano.
A TWRA Tropical Water Research Alliance comemora um ano de muitas conquistas e uma rede de renomados pesquisadores do Brasil e da Austrália. Nestes 365 dias, a TWRA se manteve conectada para manter aceso o diálogo entre a ciência, o poder público e a sociedade. Parar nunca foi uma opção. Mantivemos nossa missão de contribuir com uma melhor gestão integrada das bacias hidrográficas de nosso país em uma parceria internacional entre Brasil e Austrália. Buscamos transferir o conhecimento científico adquirido nas pesquisas por meio de diversos canais, webinários, cursos online, apoio às expedições científicas no Médio São Francisco, publicação de vários artigos e a publicação de um livro, que teve a colaboração de vários membros da TWRA. Além disso, fomos aprovados já no nosso primeiro projeto enquanto rede de pesquisa. Um ano. Como você mede isso? Que tal em conquistas? Celebramos 365 dias de muitas conquistas, parcerias, aprendizado e contribuição na busca de soluções aos problemas relacionados à água em ecossistemas tropicais. Como gotas que formam um rio, estamos expandindo e avançando na discussão sobre o uso sustentável dos recursos hídricos. Junte-se a nós, faça parte dessa aliança tropical.
Vamos garantir a água para as futuras gerações.
A água é muito importante para o planeta.
Bom dia, pessoal. Sejam bem-vindos a mais um webinário. Hoje nós teremos também um webinário internacional. E como vocês podem verificar no vídeo a seguir, é muito simples vocês traduzirem, né, terem a tradução simultânea do evento. Basta clicarem no ícone Interpretation e ativar a tradução simultânea para o português. Todos os palestrantes e o decorrer do restante desse webinário será feito em inglês. Então, qualquer dúvida você pode também perguntar para a nossa equipe técnica ali no nosso chat do YouTube ou também do próprio Zoom. Hi everyone, welcome to our second Tropical Water Research Alliance webinar cycle. Today's webinar is about education as the baseline for sustainable water use in the 21st century. My name is Mayara Neves. I am Doctor in Animal Biology and General Secretary of Tropical Water Research Alliance. It is a pleasure to have all of you with us today. Before we start, I have some background information. First, this event will be held entirely in English, and you can activate simultaneous translation in the icon below the video. Questions can be asked via Q&A, questions and answer, in the icon below the video or YouTube chat, in Portuguese or in English. Questions will be answered at the end of the lecture. Certificates will be issued from November and must be requested via email contato@twra.org. Without further ado, to open Tuesday's event, we'll have a speech by the President of the Tropical Water Research Alliance, Dr. José Francisco Gonçalves Jr. Welcome, Professor Jr.
Bom dia, Mayara. Bom dia a todos os colegas do Brasil. Obrigado pela presença e vou passar para o idioma oficial do nosso webinar, que é o inglês. I would like to thank everyone for their presence here especially our steering committee, coordinated by Professor Mario Neto. He will be a chairman of this webinar. In our foreign members of the steering committee, who represented by Leonardo, Dr. Leonardo, Dr. Sally, and Dr. and Professor Clement. Thank you for accepting our invitation to give us opportunity to learn with your experience and diverse themes that you are working in your groups. Who kindly voluntary to talk about their experience in spirit, and who knows how to increase our future collaboration with you in concrete research activities. Today, we have more 220 research, and we already have some financial resources. And we are looking for ones. TWRA seeks to change a really of conservation and management of Brazilian war research, originally in collaboration with Australian research. Think of the future focus to share experience with the entire Southern Hemisphere, with putting in this question our main mission for Alliance Research from Alliance. Thank you for accepting our invitation. We're very happy to listen our insights, and welcome to everybody for a webinar. Thank you, Mayara. Good job for everybody, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you,
Mayara.
Professor Junior. Many thanks. And today we'll have the special collaboration of Dr. Mario Neto Borges in mediation. Now I will hand the floor over to Dr. Mario Neto, who will introduce our guest speakers. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you, Mayara. Good morning, everyone. Bom dia a todos. It's a pleasure to chair this session, this special webinar with the steering committee of the TWRA. We will start with Dr. Sally as the first presentation. Dr. Sally has recently returned to the Office of Research and Development as Senior Advisor in the Center for Environment Solutions and Emergency Response in United States. She is assistant in the development of wastewater-based surveillance in communities, PFAS. She will explain what this stands for us. Treatment and advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion. From 2018 to 2020, she served as Acting Director of Water Permit Division in the Office of Wastewater Management Office of Water at US EPA in Washington, D.C. Prior to that, she was the Director of EPA's Environment Technology Innovation Cluster Development and Support Program. She also has held the position of the Director of the National Risk Management Research Lab and the Director of the Water Supply and Water Research Division in the NRMRL. She became the US EPA. Before coming to US EPA, she was responsible for administering water programs for the state of Texas. She is a hydrologist by training and has completed over 21 years of service at EPA. Welcome, Dr. Sally. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Neto. Let me begin here. Share the screen. Well, thank you very much. And it is a real pleasure and an honor to be here today to provide some perspectives on the U.S. water industry workforce. And I want to make a case for why we need to change. And I think it's it's a topic that's very much a priority for us in the United States, and I think works very well with the overall goals of this webinar, which is based around education and the role that education has in sustainable water use going forward. So it's a real honor, and it's a very humbling and role to be part of the steering committee, and I'm so excited to be part of this group. And I just think that I'll do my very best to provide my input as appropriate going forward, because I see Brazil as such an important country in helping us to really lead the work that needs to be done in climate resilience and adaptations. So with that as a beginning point, I guess I should say also bom dia, bom dia. And also I need to do the standard EPA disclaimer that these are my views and don't necessarily reflect the views or the policies or regulations of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So I wanted to start by talking a little bit about work that has been done with regard to the U.S. water industry, because this is a sector that we routinely study and we conduct research in this particular sector. In 2018, the Brookings Institution, they released this report on renewing the water workforce. And there were some very, very interesting points. Certainly, we don't have time to go extensively through this report. We could spend the entire time just talking about this report, but it did highlight some very important dimensions of this particular workforce. So in the time that they conducted the study, and in 2017, there were about 1.7 million workers in the United States that worked in and directly involved in the design, construction, operation, and governance of U.S. water infrastructure. So this is actual drinking water plants, wastewater, stormwater, and the like. So it's not an insignificant part of the U.S. Workforce overall. So I think that's pretty significant. It is significant also because these professions pay more on average than others when compared nationally. And it actually pays more for workers that are usually at the lower end of the income scale. And I'll talk a little bit more about the diversity issues regarding some of these workers. Interestingly, these workers, while we do offer training and certification to these workers, many of them, in fact, a high percentage, 53%, don't have a high school diploma or less. So you can begin to see that it's a very physical type of labor that is attributed to these by and large, and they tend to be very, very stressful from that point of view. But the workforce right now is not very well educated. Another very interesting and important dimension to this workforce is that the water workers tend to be older, characteristic of an really aging workforce. and they do lack gender and racial diversity in certain occupations. Also, the American Waterworks Association conducts an annual state of the water industry research and survey type of report. So they publish this report, and it characterizes many different dimensions of the water industry. And this is the drinking water industry, that's American Waterworks Association. And always and throughout the years when we see these state of the water industry reports, we see that the workforce issues are ranked at the top of many other issues confronting the industry. And in this case, you know, there are many, many interesting aspects here that are reported, not the least of which is the aging workforce. They anticipate a number of retirements and issues related to talent attraction, so actual attraction and retention of workers. So there are many, many, many challenges that the drinking water industry reports in this. And one can imagine if our drinking water systems, if we cannot attract the right workforce that can carry the industry forward, it could threaten our ability to provide safe drinking water to our public. But again, I want to stress the fact that we do have a lot of training and certification that we mandate in these jobs. So while they may not have a high level of formal education, there is ongoing continuing education of these workers. I wanted to talk a little bit about the issue of ethnic diversity. So in the U.S. water sector, so as the country has evolved, we are seeing more and more ethnic diversity overall in the population in the United States. However, when you look right now at the ethnic diversity of the U.S. water sector, it is not in line with the changing diversity of the country. And you can see here that predominantly it is a very single kind of ethnic or underpinning white type of workforce that is underpinning the agency right now. I think one of the challenges to the workforce going forward is this issue of how do we better diversify the workforce, and that is not going to be easy in my view. And I wanted to bring some other data to bear on this point, because when we look at the United States STEM workforce, science, technology, engineering, and math, when we look at the ethnic diversity who participates in education that is STEM oriented, you can see that in terms of ethnic diversity, we still have very, very small participation on diverse people within the country. So it's still very small. So if we're trying to build a workforce that is more diverse, more in line with the national profile of diversity, we've got some very, very difficult work ahead of us. These trends that I'm showing here, these numbers, these percentages, they have not changed in decades. So while we have a lot of programs that are seeking to improve this situation, I can say that we are not making the progress through the programs we have in place right now that we need going forward. And this has been further validated by another report that has been issued by the Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce, where it again points out that we have not done as well as we need to with regard to diverse individuals. So I would say that as a global community, you know, that our ethnic diversity across many of our countries is changing. And this is something that we need to be very attentive to, is that education pipeline. Who is educated? Who is entering these very important engineering fields and science-based fields going forward? This EPA has also been very alert to this. And in the last administration, we did launch a water sector workforce initiative. So we ran this initiative and have published a number of pieces regarding the water sector workforce. And we are trying to call attention to the critical need for a competent water workforce. And we have created this national strategy around these three themes of creating urgency and momentum and coordination, partnering to build this water workforce of the future, and to improve education and outreach to make water a career of choice, which I think is very critical, that we as a country don't necessarily promote the jobs that are available in the water sector as well as we could. I wanted to mention that from the science point of view, some of the thoughts coming out of the National Science Foundation, one of the very important mechanisms that are used by the country to support research in engineering is through centers we called engineering research centers. And we create models, little pictures that kind of seek to explain how this research should be organized. And it's interesting that in these centers, they really are organizing and expecting the applications for these engineering research centers to include convergent research. So no longer just individual research projects. They do include workforce development. They want a culture of inclusion, and they want to see innovations coming out from the ecosystem that will then impact not only the engineering community and the scientific enterprise, but society overall. I wanted to move very quickly then to the relevant issues that I think are pressing to change and improve the water workforce in the country, not the least of which is the move toward digital water, what I call the digital future of water. So as going forward with so much emphasis and so many new technologies coming to the forefront that will provide us more advanced ways to monitor many processes and many aspects of the water industry, the workforce has to be in line with being able to implement those technological solutions. So technologies such as advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning, the workforce has to be there if we're going to be successful in adopting these technologies going forward. And I wanted to bring about just the importance of mapping, because I think that more and more we can see that it's going to be a systems approach to solving water problems, and the workforce has to be educated to where they understand this aspect and can really rationalize everything that needs to, where they fit in this broader scheme of overall water management in the country. So this is just an example of a tool that we've developed, but I think the main impetus here, the main point, is that the workforce has to step up to be able to really avail ourselves of this kind of information. And I wanted to mention, the work that we've been doing on wastewater-based disease surveillance, and more we're starting to see and really accept these interconnections between water and wastewater and going back to our public health roots. But this is very advanced technology. When you're talking about digital droplet PCR, you're not going to be able to execute on that if you've got a very low level of education. So again, making the point that education is really key to successful water management in the future. And that, certainly is reflected in trying to attack very complex issues such as contaminants of emerging concern, where you have a very, very difficult task in trying to determine what contaminants are really of concern, what mixtures are of concern, and how do we attack that. But I can say that in my view, and especially in the perfluorinated compounds as an example, it is very advanced analytical procedures and sampling, many different dimensions to that are characteristic of the kinds of skills that these workers need to have. And it's the same with watershed planning, just getting back to the issue of systems-based approaches. If we're going to do this well, we have to have the workforce to be able to work through schemes such as this that are really key to solving and attacking these water problems going forward. So I think with that, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sally. It was a very good talk. I have one question myself, but we keep that for the end. Now, I would like to introduce the second speaker, Dr. Clement Tockner. Dr. Clement is Director General of the Senckenberg Society for Nature Research and Professor for Ecosystem Science in Goethe University, Frankfurt, since 2021. He was the president of Austrian Science Fund, FWF, full professor of aquatic ecology at the Free University of Berlin, and director of the Leibniz Institute of Freshwater Ecology in Inland Fisheries, Berlin. He received a PhD from the University of Vienna and a titular professor at ETH Zurich in Switzerland. He is an internationally leading freshwater scientist, in particular in the research domains of biodiversity, ecosystem science, and environment management. He is co-editor of the journal Aquatic Science and subject editor of the journal Ecosystems. He has published about 250 scientific papers, including 179 ISI papers. His member of several scientific communities and advisory boards, including the National Institute of Environment Studies, Japan, and the Biology Research Center, I think it's Czechoslovakia, I don't know. He is elected member of the Austrian Academy of Science and the German Academy of Science, Leopoldina. Welcome, Dr. Clementi, who is now also member of the TWRA Steering Committee. Welcome, Dr. Clement, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the introduction. And it's a great pleasure to be with you today. And I will just share now my screen. And I will talk about the importance of interdisciplinary research, in particular in river science. And the key reason is because the challenges that we are facing are enormous. And we are not able to cope with these challenges by working individually or just on one discipline. And I take one example of these big challenges, and this is the decline of biodiversity, which is probably the biggest challenge we are facing for two reasons. First one is if you lose the species, they are lost forever. And the second, we have no idea what it means if you lose 10, 20 or 50% of this diversity for nature and for us as humans. And the decline of biodiversity is in particular severe in freshwaters because 1 out of 3 species is threatened with extinction. You know these graphs, and it is just showing the decline of biodiversity, and it's going on. And we see every 10 years, more or less, we have very ambitious plans, but there's no kind of the decline of biodiversity is still going on. And we are now here in 2020, and we just had a big conference in China, and we hope that we can reverse this trend, but there is maybe the danger that it's just the decline is ongoing. So first one, we have this decline, we have these ambitious goals every 10 years. We have probably only a very short time frame where we can really reverse this decline. So maybe 10, 20 years that are left. The next one is that we see this are 40 years. We only have very short time scales, 40, 45 years of long-term data. And this is a challenge too, because is this long enough to understand some of these trends? And then what is not shown here, we have at the same time, we have an exponential increase in data, in information, and also in knowledge on biodiversity. But this increase in data, information, and knowledge has also no effect on the kind of the rate of change in biodiversity and this decline in biodiversity. So there are some key challenges that are related to this. The first one is biodiversity research is biased. Either we are just, the most research on biodiversity has been done in terrestrial systems, on plants, and in the rich countries. The second is the timescales that we are considering is too short. What is the kind of baseline that we have to consider? Is 45 years is too short? We have to consider at least 200 years, maybe several thousand years, in order to understand the dynamic of biodiversity change and of biodiversity loss. The third one is that the increase in data and the information is overwhelming. We are not able to cope with all this information. And Sally just mentioned the importance that we have people who are able in artificial intelligence, in big data management, in order to cope with this exponential increase in data and information. And the last one is that the translation of information into knowledge and then of knowledge into options for action is delayed or lacking. And this leads not just to an interdisciplinary research, it also leads to a kind of transdisciplinary research, in particular to combine different knowledge systems, not just the academic knowledge, but also societal knowledge, orientation knowledge, and action knowledge. So there are different kinds of knowledge that we have to integrate. And it is in particular this kind of translation of knowledge into options for actions which is missing. And this is a huge gap that we have. I use now 3 examples demonstrating that focusing just on one discipline, for example, led to ignoring whole systems, whole issues of our ecosystems and of biodiversity. The first one is temporary rivers, rivers that do not carry water for some time during a year or during some years. They are omnipresent. 60% of all rivers globally are temporary rivers. But until most recently, they had been completely ignored because freshwater ecologists are just focusing on rivers when they contain water, and for terrestrial ecologists, this was not their domain. So the separation just of 2 disciplines, terrestrial and freshwater ecologists, has led to the ignorance of 60% of the entire river network. And we didn't consider the biodiversity, how important these temporary streams are for biodiversity, how important they are for nutrient or carbon cycling. So this is just looking on the divide of disciplines. And over the last, I would say 10 years, there had been now a huge boom in filling this gap in understanding our river networks globally. The second example is that we ignored the kind of modification of the night. We were primarily focusing on the day, and we all know that we have modified the nightscapes in an immense way. We are illuminating the night, and this has huge influences on the biodiversity, on human health, on social systems, etc. But again, we have ignored this. And this is just a quote. It's now some years ago that Rich and Lancor, who were one of the first who were working on night or light pollution, what if we woke up one morning only to realize that all of the conservation during the last 30 years told only half the story, the daytime story? And the adaptations to night has been an evolution, a success in evolutionary time. And about 50% of all species are active during the night. So again, we ignored a huge part of our environment. And if we would like to understand and study the effect of light pollution, we have to work together with social scientists, with engineers, with ecologists, with evolutionary biologists, in order to understand what are the consequences of the modification of the nightscapes. The third example I would like to use is about restoration ecology. This is a typical European river. This is the Rhine River in Switzerland. It's a very generalized river system. This had been floodplain area, so a high proportion of people are living now in formerly floodplain areas. And with climate change, we have an increase in extreme events, in particular in both floods and droughts. And these people will face, people living here and properties that is located in these former floodplains, there's an increasing risk. So how to protect these people? And one of the reasons is that you can protect them not just by engineering solutions, but by combining flood protection with an improvement of the ecological status. Nature-based solutions is one of this kind of term that is used very frequently. But what it means is also that we as natural scientists, as ecologists, have to work much closer with the engineering sector. This is an almost neglected area where engineers and natural scientists are working closely together. And I think this is something, this is an example where by improving the kind of flood protection, by concurrently improving also the ecological state of the ecosystem. It's not just that we are working across disciplinary boundaries. We have to work more and more in teams. And teams, small teams are important for creating new ideas. Large teams are important for advancing existing research directions. And if we are working in teams, we have to diversify skills. We have to we have to increase the diversity of the teams as well, because each of the members have a different kind of, it's very good in one performance in area in another. And it's not just one that we are doing research, but we are doing communication, mentoring, teaching, etc. So this is something, diversifying skills and promoting teamwork in science is one of the big challenges. There had been, and I'm just showing this example by Google, the project Aristotle. What makes a Google team effective? They conducted interviews with Googlers and looked at more than 250 attributes of a large number of Google teams. The expectation was to find the perfect mix of individual traits and skills necessary for stellar teams. For example, take one Rhodes Scholar, two extroverts, one engineer who rocks it in programming and a PhD. Voila, dream team assembled. Is this correct? They were dead wrong. Who is on a team matters less than how the team members interact, structure their work, and view their contributions. There are some 5 key dynamics that came out of this that set successful teams. Psychological safety. Can we take risks on this team without feeling insecure or embarrassed? The second is dependability. Can we count on each other to do high quality work on time? It's trust as well, trusting each other. The third one is structure and clarity. Are goals, roles, and execution plans on our team clear? Third, meaning of the work. Are we working on something that is personally important for each of us? And the fifth one is the impact of work. Do we fundamentally believe that the work we are doing matters? And I think these are some kind of key issues that we have to consider much more in our academic life, but also beyond the academic life. But this also means that probably we have to change the incentives that we are applying at the moment for assessing the quality of work. And I take one example, a personal experience in this respect. We had an international, global doctoral program. It was called SMART, Science for the Management of Rivers and Tidal Systems. And it was running for 8 years, and we had about 45 doctoral candidates all across the globe. It was one of the most fascinating doctoral programs because we had this diversity of people from different cultural backgrounds, different disciplinary background. We had hydrologists, ecologists, primarily, but also people coming from numerical modeling, for example. And this was also a huge fun to work together. And we see now that the people who graduated in this program are doing very well internationally as well. So they were in somehow socialized in this interdisciplinary international team. They had to finish within 3 to 3.5 years, they had to finish their thesis. And you can learn something, you can read, there is some kind of overview that had been put together, lessons that we had from this interdisciplinary doctoral program, Smart Research Toward Interdisciplinary River Science in Europe, because it had been carried out in Europe. Also, the people came from all over the world. But at the end, finally, it is this intrinsic motivation that is fundamental to all research. And this is, I'm citing here Yoshinori Oshumi, who got the Nobel Prize about, I think, 3 years ago. And when he was asked about what was the main kind of, the main reason for being successful, he just quoted, "I wanted to do something no one else was doing." And I think this is a kind of motivation that will be more risky, work across boundaries, disciplinary boundaries, geographic boundaries, institutional boundaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Clement, for this excellent talk. We keep the questions for the end of the presentations. Now I will introduce Dr. Leonardo Piccini. He is Senior Research in Innovation Advisory. He is the founder of and CEO of several small, medium enterprises around Europe, in UK, Italy, and Ireland. Leonardo is an experienced project manager and process consultant for complex EU programs. He holds a BSc in economics at the University of Rome, Italy, with a special focus on water management in Mediterranean countries. He finished his master in European Studies at Sussex European Institute at the University of Sussex in UK. In 2021, Leonardo was awarded a research degree at the University of Chester, United Kingdom, at Chester Business School in Warrington. Leonardo is European Climate Pact Ambassador for Water Sector and core member of the Water Europe in nature-based solutions, emerging contaminants, and the human capital in water sector. Welcome, Dr. Leonardo. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mario. It's a pleasure for me to introduce my talk. It's very interesting to work on the Tropical Water Research Alliance. My presentation will be specifically focusing at European level, of course. What we're doing in Water Europe is an important network that we are involved. And in particular, what I would like to stress, I found very fascinating the talk from Sally, but also from the previous speaker, where we talk about the digital water, the interdisciplinary approach. The reason why I would like to tell you this is because we are working now in the human capital in the water sectors at European level, at project level, but also we are now focusing on different topics that will be linked to the water policy, specifically on the educational and the skill agenda. So my intervention briefly try to give you an overview why is important human capital in Europe, in particular in the water sectors, and how we're challenging several aspects that I would like to stress in my presentation. I already mentioned from Professor Mario, we are come from an academics part, but from the business sectors. We've been involved in several projects, also in Brazil, in terms of water sectors. And one of the areas that we are focusing on a moment is to better understanding also research and innovation collaboration in terms of water in between Europe and Brazil in particular. But that will be an interesting point that I would like to stress when we talk about the new program, the Horizon Europe, which is specifically also open to the world. The issues of the implication of the social scientists in the water sectors. And that will be also an important aspect to stress the behavior change, the engagement of the citizen, and one of the aspects will be part of my recommendation in this presentation. So let me just to give you an overview, first of all, of the human capital agenda. Why is a very important common interest at European level? At a moment, in particular, in the general overview, water is from the Water Economic Forum, but you can see also in next week regarding the activities from the COP26. Water is extremely key element from the society, economy, from the environment. I would like to stress this is not only from the environmental, but from the economical, but also from the social implication. And in particular, the definition of the human capital, there was through an important author, Gail Berker, which is the author of the Human Capital, which is defined. The human capital is a collection of not exhaustive future of skill, knowledge, and experience and background. So I would like to go back to what it was mentioned from the previous speaker. That is an extremely important of the reach, the aspect of the collection of these skill, knowledge, experience, and the collaboration and trust. But there is a several initiatives at European level, which is the human capital agenda is being conducted from the Erasmus program, which is very focused on educational level. We have the EURES portal at the national member states level, which are facing three major limits of the strong human capital agenda. One is, of course, is the issues of the fragmented water sectors. Secondly, the lack of data at European level and the weakness of the European institution in the social policies. And this is an important aspect from us that from the European Green Deal, and in particular related to the European policy for the climate change adaptation, which is I'm working as a climate ambassador, one of the issues is to make the link between the implication of education, knowledge, research, and innovation also to the social policy dimension. One of the key aspects we underlined in the report from the particular from the Water Europe is specifically to see that the human capital and World Bank and from the World Economic Forum, there will be developed two index for the data countries. But this is done and very general, and the European level from the European Environmental Agency, they collect the water data, and the Joint Research Center and the Eurostat, they are creating the WISE Freshwater and platform to gathering several water-related data. But one of the major concerns that we have is the human capital is not included in this platform. So when we talk about data in terms of skill, when we talk about the human capital in water sectors, they're not connecting at European level through those agencies. But there is also another aspect that we would like to stress. The power of the European institution is very limited. There are not very strong support in terms of the innovative water sectors. There will be suffer this coordination role between the Director General of Research and Innovation, the DG Environment for Water, DG Education for Education and Youth. So this is an important aspect that I would like to stress at European level, that water policy is a silos that we should be also an integrated approach at local level, and in particular related to the educational programs as well. What we would like to sharing also the fact that the human capital agenda, as I said, is a common European interest, in particular through the European directed and the regulatory implementation at national level. So just to give an example of the freshwater sectors is based on the concession of the private utilities and local municipality will be responsible for the monitoring the service. In the UK, for instance, before for the Brexit, it was extremely important to see the evolution of the water related legislation to encourage the private management aspect, but also considering, for instance, Italy and Belgium as another member states, there will be very strong regional dimension of the water sectors has been done to diversify. The European institution, they can find a common denominator for the human capital and water sectors, but there is a specifically recommend at European level to achieving, as we say now, the water smart society, which is meaning the sectors need the investment in labor, but also to have a new water-related challenge in climate change and water scarcity in emerging compounds. So what has been said already about the digital water, the introduction of the artificial intelligence for data is one of the top priority for the water smart society aspect. But there is another very important aspect that we need to take in consideration is not only the investment from education, research, and innovation, but there will be an important investment for environment and climate change in terms of program from the demonstration of the regulation, like the LIFE program, but also the human capital development through the regional funding mechanism and a member states level through the structure and cohesion fund for the decades. So I would like to stress to encourage the European agenda for the water-related human capital is extremely important from us to have the new range of skills. So European water sector need to have a very strong skill and knowledge in the future to have an outcome through the services that we made through the Water Europe activity to respond, which are the important skills that will be related to the digital, financial, technical, linguistic, environmental, human, innovative, political, social skills that will be linked to very close. On the top of that, there will be not enough to have an integrated of the different skills for relevant employers. I would like to stress one of the important aspects that was already mentioned, especially from Dr. Sully, the issues of the demography. And one of the key aspects that we raise in terms of workforce, gender, race, equality, disability, that will be also linked to the young professional, to the knowledge transfer between the new and old generation of professionals. So that will be an important aspect at member states level that will be implementing this structure and coherent human capital policy for the water sectors. So this kind of mix between age and gender for the flexibility, the dynamics, which is the company, they should be increasing in the future. Water management, they will be increasing the diversity of the skill in this hydrology, chemistry, hydraulics, economics, biology, legal science, and social science, like the example was mentioned of the SMART team, to ensure that there will be also an age of the diversity of the transgeneral program, opportunity to transfer to these support skill from bring innovation for the new ideas. So the new ideas, they have to become from the bottom up, more from the top down. And an example, in the European country, they are very specific regulated for the gender equality aging, transfer of knowledge that will be specifically not related to the water sector. So the most common workforce diversity element in Europe are disability, gender, and age. But for instance, any company in France, just to give an example, they have more than 20 employees. They must be have a 6% of the staff disabled works should be paid an additional contribution from the national agency. So the European Union is promoting the women innovators in Europe with annual prize, with encourage women in the gender gap in research and innovation. But we would like to stress our conclusion to say that the European White Book water-related human capital could be an important step forward for the initiative and collaboration in terms of the climate change to increase and identify the skill and knowledge of the European aspect. But there will be also an important aspect to increase this benchmarking analysis through the GRC, the European Investment Agency, including the human capital research to the report in the future to exchange data and cooperation through the WISE platform in those topics. So encouraging this professional training that we make sure that Europe will be remaining an important economy, but will be also linked to the beyond Europe, like Latin America and Brazil. There will be an important increasement of the investment of the European citizen and human capital. And I would like to stress that is an important aspect that we are working at European level is the encouragement to have we call the quadru-helix model, which is an open innovation to be involved industry, to involve knowledge, to involve stakeholders and policymakers, and in particular to be involved the citizen. So how we be involved the citizen and to have a more trust in this innovative solution. And this is one of the work what we currently doing in several European projects to make sure that the participation of citizen decision process making will be linked to some, let's say, a co-creation, co-decision process like the Living Lab through innovative solution to be accepted the citizen needs to the behavior. So I would like to stop here, and I'm sure there will be some discussion. Specifically, we'll have to put on the table the human capital agenda in the water sector. A lot of work has to be done. We are talking quite often now, in particular in this period, about the climate change and the implication of water issues. But in order to improve in these skills, we need to have a concerted, a synchronized policy program and particular collaboration between different countries. Thank you very much for your attention. And I go back to you, Professor Mario.
Thank you very much, Leonardo, for the excellent talk. Many challenging to be faced. Now we start the time for question and answers. We have half an hour to discuss this. So for that, I'm counting on Mayara to help me with the questions if we have any. So please, Mayara.
Okay, Professor Mario. Well, we have audience a little bit ashamed, I think. Evanilde Benedito says, thanks so much, congratulations for talks. And Professor Mario, we can start with your question for Sally that you mentioned in the niche.
Yeah, I have one question for Sally and one question that I would share with Clement and Leonardo. I would like to have their opinion, both of them in the same question. For Sally, it was very interesting that you talked about the workforce, not only they are become aging, but also not well educated, let's say, for the challenges of the 21st century. So is there any particular or specific training program or course for these people? I mean, is the government providing any kind of special training or course for preparing these people for facing these disruptive innovation techniques that are coming up?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Dr. Nieto. We are constantly, as an industry and government and our nonprofit organizations that represent these workers, such as the American Water Works Association, our efforts are all around improving the education and knowledge base to these workers. And I stressed in the talk about how we do have these certification programs, graded levels of certification for these utility workers, but those trainings have been more on, more traditional operation and maintenance and compliance with the regulations. They have not been as geared toward this future, but I can see in the information that is being disseminated out to these workers that these topics are coming up over. So resources are becoming available to them. While I think that it's going to take us a little bit of time to catch up on the certification part, but that information is starting to permeate through the industry. But it's not enough, in my view. I think we need to do better.
Yeah. Technology is evolving very quickly, so it makes it difficult for people to keep up with the new technologies.
Yes.
Now, I'd like Clement and Leonardo's comments on the particular program which was mentioned, or Horizon Europe. We have the Horizon Europe, and for this year, if I can share my screen here, Mayara, I could show this to make my question clearer.
Right.
This is the information from Horizon Europe, and one of the cluster for this year, 21-22 projects is the thematic area of water, energy, food nexus, energy system modeling, and also climate science, renewable energy. Many of these topics have to do with the water environment. So I would like to hear from Clement and Leonardo if there are any projects that are being prepared so that we could talk about partnership between European institutions and TWRA, because this would be very important to take part in this project. So please, Dr. Clement first and Leonardo after about this topic, please.
Thank you. I know about some consortia that are being formed at the moment, because a lot of these consortia, they have a history where they already work together, and then they are continuing in different kind of programs. So this is something I'm not involved in any of these proposals or calls at the moment, but this is maybe Leonardo has a much better overview about the diversity of the consortia that are in the moment in the building phase for this call.
Mayara, you can take my. Okay, I can see here. Okay.
Right.
Leonardo, please.
Well, thank you very much for the interesting question. There is two issues that I want to stress first. Every time that I came to, of course, to Brazil and Latin America, we, of course, collaboration. Unilateral programs that we are now carry on between.
Leonardo, your connection is not good. We cannot hear you. Oh, that's a pity.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Sometimes happen.
Leonardo, we cannot hear you.
No, go down.
Oh.
Professor Mario, we received a question from Herman to Clement.
Okay, go ahead.
Professor Clement, what is the best method to integrate the science? How to work in teams and interact to integrate the objectives and the conclusions with your experience, of course.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Professor?
Yeah, I apologize for my connection. Sometimes at a moment I'm in the university. Well, I'm trying to say a few words. Of course, European collaboration is bilateral, can be between several programs like ERANET, which is, I believe, is quite an important when we talk about biodiversity. Now there is a call open. There will be also an interesting aspect for the regarding the aspect of the co-funding mechanism. I would like to stress a few things about the Horizon Europe. One aspect, I strongly believe that Horizon Europe need to have a very strong consortium, a strong interdisciplinary approach, even from technology and in particular from the social scientists. In a moment, there is a call open, which is currently could be useful for the TWA, but also with the Australian partner, regarding the mobility program of the staff exchange. This is an interesting novelty. Today, there is also an information that I would like to share with you. There will be an important program between Europe and Latin America about the staff exchange program from Horizon Europe. Let me tell you something which is extremely important, because from us, we've been quite successful as a partner. So in the past, the staff exchange program, it was a very strong focus in between research and innovation, specifically between research actor and non-research actor. So that's why we also been involved in the Recopharma project, in the Marefish project with the USP in Amazon regions. But I would like to also stress one aspect. There is a strong component to be work at universities level, staff exchange program, to have 1/3 of the staff mobility, not only in the universities with industry, but collaboration of this. I will share with you this call, which is, I'm sure that your national contact point is really well aware about this specifically. The deadline is in March. What can be financed about this call? Of course, every partner from Europe, outside Europe, will be mostly welcome to participate on this call. Is a very strong focus on specific scientific research activities, very bottom up, regarding mobility program, including workshop, technological training, summer school. But I would like also stress an important aspect, which is an important aspect from my point of view, is to have also as a comment regarding to the entrepreneurship and innovation. Where are the impact of innovation, in particular related in the water sector? What we've done, for instance, in the past in Brazil, for instance, if we talk about emerging contaminant in pharmaceutical pollutants, we do some training for some specific young researchers to increasing the collaboration in market research. So one of the main issues is not only to produce and generate the new skill in research in the water sector, but there will be extremely important also to make a very strong link to the innovation aspect, the technology transfer, in particular certification. Now, as you remember, the procurement aspect has become extremely interesting from the water sectors in Brazil. But there will be also an important aspect also in Europe, where we have in a moment the circular economy action plan to increase in this collaboration of industry in water sectors. So what I would like to stress is very challenging, it's very competitive program in general. The Horizon Europe, we need to have some specific training, maybe in the water sector, and in particular related to the impact, because now the impact have to be changed. If you see specifically the impact of the Horizon Europe, have to be very strong linked to the social, economic, technological, and societal impact. So that's it was a mention today, and I found very inspiring. In particular, when we talk about teamwork in science, should we have a very complementary expertise. Just to give an example, one of the projects what we done in the past in the water energy nexus to increasing this mobility program, it was also increasing this behavior economist for willing to pay the water taxation. As you know, now in Europe, we have a big problem of utilities bills. So in terms of energy bills, water bills, what can be the responsiveness also from the citizen concerned? And there will be an issues of the some specific polluting aspect in the coastal, in the ocean research topics could be extremely interesting in the water sectors. So there will be one of the opportunities. If we have an opportunities to work with the association, I will be glad to also to share this information to you and to your members to facilitate the collaboration at the federal level and state level, the collaboration of the mobility and grants to make these ambassadors of the TWRI in these collaboration programs and the synergies that we have with these in the CNPq.
Very good. That is very welcome, Leonardo. Then after this meeting, we keep in touch to see this information, and I believe that many people that are in the audience will be interested in knowing about this mobility, research mobility. Dr. Clement, you are now ready for your answer, or would you like Mayara to repeat the question? It's not necessary.
Yeah. If you briefly repeat, because I wasn't sure exactly what was the question. Could you briefly repeat, Mayara, the question? Yeah.
Yes, no worries. The question is, Professor Clement, what is the best method to integrate the science? How to work in teams and interact to integrate the objectives and the conclusions, according to your experience? I see the answers in your presentation. 5 key dynamics to set the successful team apart.
I mean, the key driver behind working in teams is curiosity. I mean, just to be driven by curiosity and not driven by, let's say, just looking on a linear way of career development, because there is no linear career development. So this is something, this is a myth. Careers emerge or they happen in somehow as well. We can support them. We have to support them. But there are 2 aspects. The first one is, I think, if people have a permanent position or a tenure track position where they have a long-term perspective, they have a huge responsibility in order to cross boundaries, to be much more risky in somehow as well, to think long-term, to build up capacity, because working in cross-disciplinary or cross-institutional settings, there is some investments at the beginning that are required, but then it pays off. So this is something, because you are going for the high-hanging fruits in somehow. So you need the curiosity, and then you need trust, and you need respect for the other disciplines or the other areas. If you are in an early stage of career, and we just heard about all these mobility programs. This is just when we are, I mean, this SMART that I was mentioning, this was paid by the European Union. It was an Erasmus Mundus joint doctorate program, but it was clearly a global program at the end. And I think it is this kind of exchange and learning and benefiting from different ways of thinking, different ways of cultures, different ways, so somehow to expose yourself to this. And I think this is, you could consider it as a risk, or you could consider it as a huge opportunity. I would just recommend it, just do it in some ways. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't work, then it's a failure, but still this is a huge kind of learning experience that we have. We have to take risks in science.
Thank you, Dr. Clement. We have a question from Leonardo, and after his manifestation, I would like to bring Sally for the final round and the questions among yourselves, if you have questions to each other. But before this round, let's listen to Leonardo. He has a hand up. Okay.
Thank you. My is not a question. I think is a very important reinforcement. Reinforce the comment from Clement. At European level, the collaboration between Erasmus and Horizon Europe will be extremely important in the future for capacity building. But in particular, there is an area where I would like to stress, where we talk about the skill development, the development plan. It was mentioned from Clement. There is a very strong emphasis now about gender equality plan. At European level, we are now obliged especially the universities level, to have from 2022 the gender equality plan. And this is extremely important also for the career development. So when we talk about skill development is extremely important for generation of new knowledge, not only for the scientists, but also the people behind of the scientists in the laboratories, because that will be an important aspect to see project manager, researcher support, technician, laboratory expertise. So this is an important aspect that I would like to stress, that the career development as a center of excellence will be extremely involved. In Europe, we have an interesting initiative, which is called Twinning, which is specifically targeted to the countries of the associate country. Unfortunately, it's not open to the Latin America, to the third countries, but there will be an important exercise to improve in the center of excellence and the collaboration between research network that we have. So gender equality plan, taking consideration in the future, if you are ready to participate in future any activity, that will be important for the career development.
Yeah, this gender issue has been a hot topic everywhere in the world, hasn't it? Even Sally has mentioned this point in USA. So Sally, do you have any question for Clement or Leonardo?
Well, I was very fascinated by Dr. Tuckner's slide where on the research that was done by Google to try and how would you develop these teams? And I've thought for quite a while that, our current process for developing grant proposals and this is very much based on relationships, folks that have worked with each other for many years. And I wondered, how could tools like what you talked about with Google add additional strength to ongoing teams? How can we use data and analytics to really almost like create what will be successful teams? I've thought that for a long time now, rather than relying on these networks, right? Could we through these analytics just, create these dream teams to get better scientific outcomes, more innovation? I mean, really come up with real game-changing types of results.
I mean, because I think we have to put much more effort in this thinking. We have to be careful that our academic system is not generating a very kind of uniform way of characters in research as well. And this is because we are just measuring very simple and always the same aspects. And there are very good data that are showing that teams that are composed of diverse people are much more productive, even if you have a team of just only high performers. But if they are all more or less from the same kind of thinking way, they are less productive, less innovative, less creative than if you have the diversity. When I was at ETH, there was a kind of saying that you can measure the innovation or the excellence of an institute just by the number of different passports. And this was probably the best indicator. Wow. And it's the gender diversity, it's age diversity, it's social, cultural diversity, and we have to actively foster this. That's so critical. It opens your mind and you get new ideas, and we should, as said, we should be much more risky as well. There is no failure. I mean, you learn so much when you fail in sometimes as well. And this is not in our culture. It's not in and we are thinking in these 3 years terms of projects. And we should invest much more in people and not so much in projects, probably.
Good. Very good. Any more question among you three?
Well, I just wanted to say that we do have data that says that companies and organizations who are more diverse tend to have better outcomes, business outcomes, and a number of them. So we have, data that supports exactly what you're saying. So, yeah.
And maybe we can learn a lot from the industry sector, from Google or from other companies, successful companies that we look outside of the just academic world as well.
Yes.
To learn from them. But I have a question to Sally. I mean, because you always, I know it from, we have very few. The Freshwater Society community is primarily also white.
Yes.
It's not very, why it's not more diverse? I mean, it doesn't reflect the kind, in particular also in the US, it doesn't reflect the ethnic composition. What is the reason?
Yeah, to me, it's complicated, but not that complicated, right? So we have had a history of not valuing, certain sectors of our population. They don't get the same education, even at the very early parts. Even though we have integrated schools, we have differences in the quality of schools, the funding of schools, and we have a system that is designed to leave a large number of people, primarily people of color, behind in there. So I don't think we should be surprised or horrified or whatever, however we want to describe the outcome, because we have this system that doesn't promote that right now. Now things are changing, and certainly the current administration is all over this, in terms of policy and executive orders all over. But it's just that for a long, long time, we've structured our society in a way to not promote that. And until that changes in a meaningful way, we're not going to attain that place that we need to be here to get those results, right? And that's what I feel like our environment will suffer if we don't change that. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Leonardo, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I would like to also stress what Sally said. It was quite interesting about the issues of the education system. In European level, the 27 member states level, they have a completely different fragmented educational system. But there is another very important aspect I would like to stress. If we want to encourage our future students to work in water sectors, one of the issues is that we need to start from the scratch at the educational level. And this is important to work also at the school level. One of the areas that we'll be working in the civil society is to encourage science and education to translate the new jobs, because this is a very important aspect from us. I strongly agree about the STEM should be an important role, but we need to also make the link of STEM to the creativity. So considering now the new youth generation become more creative than we are in the past. So when we talk about water, we should also work with the creative industries. Where we talk about the implication of the concern, they are more concerned them than we've been in the past from us. So we try to translate very simple communication at the school level as well. So we would like to empower the new young student to working on educational activities in the water sector. This could be an interesting exercise can be done. Maybe at the European level, maybe a European project collaboration to increasing this collaboration of this education system, because many education systems are very conservative. It's very top-down approach. But if you're working on in particular to creativity and to work on the system, there will be also an interesting aspect to consider.
Thank you very much, Leonardo. Well, time is up, so we get to the end. I would like to thank all of you three, Sally, Clement and Leonard for the inspiring talks and this good discussion at the end. Very good discussion. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much for being part of the steering committee of TWRA. We keep in touch. And now I would like also to thank everyone all the audience who take part in this webinar of TWRA. And now I give the floor to Mayara to the final remarks. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to be with you this morning, in this afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. We have come to the end of our second Tropical Water Resource Alliance webinar cycle, and we appreciate everyone's participation. For more information, visit our website and your social media. Thanks again for your presence, and have a great day, and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Clement, Leonardo, Sally. It was their inspiration that you give us. It was a gift. I cannot find a special word to express my feeling about your speech. And I think that's not because the English quality of mine, but I don't know, find a word in Portuguese to express my feeling about your words. It's very inspiration. I would like to have more time. I think that you will introduce many things. I would like to say the final words. During our presentation, in my mind, I remember about the end of the 20th century that the world was living about the globalization and many actions, many organizations, UNGs in the world to express, to make an expression of the globalization moment. Now, our countries, our regions looking for direction in the national things and the important national things than global things. And when I saw your words here, I feel why we lose our globalization spirit, because we can learning a lot when you change our experience and when you listen our different ideas, and you can go on together. You'll be easy, faster, and more efficient. And you, everybody say the education is important. We need to invest more money in the education, individual formation, and bring the skill of the individual to find the solution for different problems and complex problems. And you, during our moment, I think about this, why the humanity to come back the past and the national will be better than share and increase together. I don't know, but I feel during the day, during the week, about these feelings that you bring us, give us a gift. It's very important to us. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Okay, Junior, if you stay a little bit more just for some arrangements, please.
Professor Mario, we can't keep it in this room because the webinar is run yet.
Okay.
So you can close the
I'll phone him for the file. So thank you very much. Thank you, Leonardo. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nice to meet you. Bye-bye.